also reflect, hey, like everywhere. No, right? I think it's just
Yeah, this I don't know. Like, I'm not so technically advanced in that sense. I just work from like user interfaces. So
yeah, same actually. Like when we pin something there, okay, it's public. Let's say you are an artist, and then you sold that and out there using that, and then you made it like, hey, unpin, and then wow, where is the artwork now? That's what I mean. I haven't tried.
I think what happens is there's some kind of time limit. I just don't know what it is, but the default is that your files will be wiped after so much time. And so when you pin it, you're basically saying, I don't want this to be wiped. And the network says, okay, great, we'll keep it for you. And I think the idea is there that every time you publish, you get a new CID. So if you put the same file up there and republish, then your whole file CID changed, your hash changed. And that's the way you can also tell that the information's good, is that the hash didn't change. So once you change that hash, you have a new copy of the same thing, and that's why the default is to wipe anything that's not pinned. I think does that make sense to you?
Definitely.
because I'm also part of another group which is called Motion DAO, which is on another chain. But then basically what I learned about it and like participating in the weekly talks is that it works around ethics, and I participated in doing some graphic design for the Consilience library project. I think this project is a lot about like, one thing is like a regenerative workflow, so it's a lot about learning how to develop tools which can be applied for crypto economics, about the ethical aspect, and they're kind of thinking a lot about the crypto economic flower, which is kind of coming out of a paper called The Foundations of Crypto Economy. And what I learned from it is kind of it's an ecosystem with like a very diverse base of participants, and a lot of persons. Like, this initiative is kind of starting up kind of like initiatives within this ecosystem, and specifically the library is kind of thinking about how to invite subject matter experts to contribute. So that's kind of my understanding from it, but probably if you ask someone else they will have a different understanding, but I think that's a bit also how the project is.
That's quite interesting, I found, really. Also building some regenerative ecosystems of goes like that. Something like a big bang to me, like with art and connecting cities. It went quite scalable right now. Just gotta prove that by just people there and doing like project. I start them with D-work, by the way, like I find it quite useful. Like, it's been since 2 days to find like 10 DAOs there just for illustration profile. But on my website there is stateful art. Really like.
Just send me a message or something. I don't know if there's like a group chat here or something. I don't know how to work with this. But...
that sucks, but yeah.
Yeah.
Really,
if you put your site on the Omega Tech's working group.
Just post the group.
Yeah, and what Steph says is basically my understanding too. Is like the first major project is the library, but like within that project there's research projects, and then what I'm doing on my own is like creating my own research project into like, basically it's like the importance of like creativity when you're in a group, especially when you want to bring a project into like reality, from like the idea stage into working it out until like now you got something, whether it's content or a working model for your app or whatever. Like the process of working in conjunction with for my main contention is that within the process of working on a project, especially too if you got people that care and you have someone that's creative, then your messaging, your artwork, your media all comes organically from that. And like I'm doing my proof of concept of like everything that I'm producing right now. Like I'm making these video edits that are collective. The way I'm trying to write is collective and bringing in multiple people. And this is like what I believe later is like how you see these projects that are more than just projects, but they're also these ecosystems that could tie up. But it's like it starts from little seeds of ideas, these little groups, and then them somehow, just being in touch with each other and syncing in the larger context of like DAOs and then other DAOs and stuff like that.
So I was gonna say that.
Yeah.
That was kind of, I wanna really incentivize communities like here. Hey, become a DAO. Come on, like there is one really cool one here in Hamburg. Like they rescued some part of a city, like the oldest one in the middle, and they become like some co-op like since 20-30 years. And artists actually residency, via residency they also renovate there, and events funding those renovation, like regenerating the neighborhood also, like from its history to everything. I really want this stateful art really creating that exchanges between artists and people, invite them, they create like another thing is increasing mobility of them would help on that, like they can I just feel like for in general, like reducing reducing overproduction, we need to know more about demand, and if that's like there and people can observe that, like there are a lot of stuff happening because of ambiguity, like not known or not planned, or what's scheduled, kind of. And I think that would help give some context, especially on residencies. I wanna really find out if that's some who decides, like who is staying there or how. So those gotta be something that complemented by locals, but also removes, like as people becoming active on those really communities, they gain some trust there. They're gonna be maybe invited or something. So that's like, I think the residence part is cool thing. Yeah, and it's like, bring your own genre just to become something like dispatch point, just want to illustrate a couple of stuff. We can maybe do something like that. And as people there, I feel like only admin and contributor there, I don't like it. I mean, who likes that? It's just the way we connect there on the main page. It's also like having multiple versions, like coffee shop selection, kind of. After art directions, it goes like multi-tab and content below, community curates. I love it, man. Really, like, I found some convenience in blockchain and creating their own economy, rewarding the one. But I'm gonna need knowledge on tokenization more, because we're gonna mint those genre tokens and also platform tokens start. And I can do it quickly, but I wanna make it good. And like stuff, I wanna share it, like make sure that artists are actually governing, so to say, or people inviting artists, not only defining some event, everything decided they wanted. Like really possible. Yeah,
for
it
sure.
would be cool, like connecting. And
Yeah.
I love tech, you know.
You know what's it's kind of interesting. This kind of in a way ties into what Jolly Lama was talking about, of like it, you know, this buddy system of, you know, part of onboarding, you know, is like you look into for yourself of like what DAOs and what you're doing, but like when you have like a friend that helps you, a buddy system that it helps like scale up and scaffold up trust, like just like this instant kind of like trust. And then like that's kind of my idea in the broader sense of the NFT Redux. It's like a simple way to being like, okay, we're cool in the sense that like we work in this Creative Commons way. We work for like the commons, but you know, we're open to learn and like share our stuff with other people, like you know, with this understanding that we're all growing and learning together. But like what helps that is what Jolly Llama was, and then we have this symbol that we're starting off with the Stargate. And it's just like a simple way to just like frame it in a different way to make it a little bit more fun, a little bit more exciting. And but it's a way to start to work at these other little front end design decisions in a collaborative way, like with people's input, but like meaningful input, not just like everybody like a bunch of noise. And so like that part is like pretty interesting to me. And I've been like doing some stuff with my other friend from this other group, Team Human. But anyways, it's called Mandala Narrative Research, and it's kind of about that, like, okay, you do these mind mappings of like say yourself, but then later when projects you do the mind mapping of the project, and then like later you find out, oh, like there's a lot of overlapping of like skill sets, but there's also like things that complement each other, and like that's just like good for me to know, but it's also like good for like everybody to know, but like in a way that's like coherent and in a way that has like a guide to like anybody who's really curious about that could use that. And really, if you learn it, from my understanding of that, especially the narrative mandala, like that's how you, in one sense, design this stuff ethically, because then just in the framework, it's like baked in to have a dynamic system of like, okay, there's like these different not types of people, but there's like fluid neurodiversity and other different ways to look at it that actually complement each other if you know how to like weave the narrative in a sense. It's like very new stuff I'm getting into, but there's this one technique that I'm trying to learn that it's about how using the mind maps, and it's like a rotating thing. But it's kind of interesting. Later I'll share more of that when I get it down to being able to like show it. I could just tell you about the concept right now. And then Eclipse is here. He's probably listening at work. What's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Yeah,
How about you?
Yeah, I'm just working here, listening to you guys. Very interesting.
Yeah, you know, just real quick, because I haven't talked to you in a while. I gotta keep up. I've been wanting to hook up with Minds Gaming, but I keep on forgetting, or like we've been having technical issues in a sense. Like I was like, oh, I'm ready, and then he doesn't look at his messages, and he's like, oh shit, are you still ready? I'm like, oh, I like.
Yeah.
So, how's everything going with Joystream?
It's good. It's good. I mean, like Minds Gaming had that run at the council. He got close, so we'll see what happens next time around.
Oh, cool.
I'm trying to get into that.
Yeah.
DAO.
Yeah, the Joystream DAO. I've been like just like on the sidelines, like reading and trying to catch up. But today I'll have time to like set up Imaginarium on Joystream and then see about, you know, doing some of those bounties and seeing what's up. 'Cause, Imaginarium has a whole vault of stuff that we could put on there.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah, learning, man, because it's nothing is like very obvious once you get there. Like there is a bit of digging to do in the forum side of things, how to set up the boundaries, all that stuff. So trying to learn. I got like a tiny job there on the HR working group.
Oh, cool.
Just to kind of get my foot in the door, be directed to the right information, I guess, so I don't waste time.
Yeah, that's big.
Trying to learn a lot there, But still reading the Omega chat. I read. It's too complicated for me, I think. But
what I'm trying to do, and it'll take some time, but I think real quick, it's what I refer to as the NFT Redux like puzzle game. It's like all of those like helpful tips, but like organized in a meaningful way, and like hopefully like you interacting with it is like you determine what's actually curious to you. Like if you're more inclined to creativity, then hopefully on the third try that we give you these options of like what you could explore, they're like what I called weird, right? They're like the poetry, they're the concepts, they're the abstract art, they're the weird videos. Like if that like intrigues you more, then what I'm like theorizing in a sense is like that curiosity is the one that ultimately makes your decisions for you. Like that's how, and then like to like get people to recognize that, and then even use the cards is just a way to like be more mindful of it, and then you develop your own cards of like how you do it, and then you pass that on to everybody, and that's part of like this cultural equity. And like over time, I think that like knowledge pool, that wisdom pool, that art pool is actually the stuff that we're really going after and what we're really trying to capture. And like, yeah, that's just my thoughts on that.
That's awesome. Art kind of like a land schema, like unions. Let's say every individual and from individual to goes like all that, and they make like that circles that between them there are like art genres, like even contained. I'd like to use this word within a person, like it's a multi-state condition for real. Like I'm thinking of, hey, an artist, let's say, edit a song there, included in a library, and then of course that's like a NFT place, but the thing is, hey, your song contains some rock, some punk, some jazz, classical, maybe some rock symphony, and you decide its ratios, proportions, how much it contains from which base genre, and with community as well. That's the thing I want to really experience. Hey, like an artist thinking it's totally like punk rock, but without that saying, maybe can ask people to make something together on that. But yeah, seeing artworks as collection of or portfolio of each being a multi-token as kind of like a collection, fusion of them.
Yeah, I'm definitely resonating with those thoughts, because that's like, arbitrarily I came up with this game, and there's like roles to play, and there's 5 different roles, and they're kind of like archetypes. So the one novel one, I put shaman, artist, systems thinker, coder / builder, and then like student / beginner's mind. And those are like all the stages of kind of like your own complexity. It's just a way to like contain them and to start to analyze them in a sense. And so that same like principle is in another group I was talking about, kind of using that, and I said, Satori D is B shaman. No, it's punk, B shaman. I forgot what exactly I said, but I made all these like little categories of like what I consider myself in a sense. And like I put punk in there because like I grew up like going to backyard gigs, and like I got so like crazy into punk that like I thought everybody was posers if they didn't like make their own like clothes or they didn't get that shirt from like a gig, and like I didn't like anybody who bought like shirts from like, you know, like the mall or whatever. like that ethos of like do it yourself type of thing, and that's like I think crossed over into like remix culture, and like that's why I'm like so much about like remix culture, which I kind of want to like bring out in that sense, in this like narrative mandala sense, because later you find out that like everything's like a blend of all these like categories, and like yeah, it's good to do those categories, but you see where like all of the like what I'm calling meaningful novelty, where like all of the like progression happens when it's clashing of those two, you know, like there's like, you know, some punk ethos, like cyberpunk meets like, you know, whatever, like, you know, like the past couple like trendy ones are like country and like rap, but like, you know, even when I was younger it was like hip hop and metal, yeah, like Korn and all that kind of stuff, and you know that was good, but like it always happens too in my contention is like on the lower levels, like people to people like sharing and then just clashing. Like, you know, in culinary school you learn like modern cooking, what's considered modern cooking and what comes to fine dining is actually the clashing of what the Japanese were doing and what the French were doing. And the French had the brigade system, so they mainly made it more institutionalized, where the Japanese had more of the artistry, and when they met they like combined their ideas, and then that's what's considered modern cooking, is basically the system of the brigade system that the French come up with, but with the plating and artistry of the Japanese. And like when you find out like developments of like culture and ideas, it's always this clashing of like those two complementary pieces, and or I even now I think it's a collective of like multiple things happening at different levels. So it's not only like the genre of music that's clashing, but like the genre of like video editing mixed with like the genre of narrative. And like that's something I've been playing around with like on Imaginarium for like a long time, but like now I'm just like beginning to like try to explain it, or trying to like not define it, but like give like useful things of like how I guess I'm being challenged to think about it. But also too at the same time is like open source philosophy is like what I've been preaching, but I haven't been doing in a sense, is like sharing all of that. But I was like, that's why I come up with the little puzzle game. It's like, how do I do it in a way that I feel like is, for lack of a better word, ethical, or goes to my own like personal, like, which for lack of a better word I call team human philosophy. Meaning, you know, there's a problem with mechanizing everything, and I think that's a problem that we have right now, is where we think what's more important is how you market something, and versus the creation of that artwork or that development of something comes out of like these personal passions, and then later you could define the categories that made it like go viral or whatever. And I also have a contention that anything that goes viral is in a lot of sense manufactured. I mean, there's like these networks of, especially now, bots that like boost something to make it go viral, and then which is a self-fulfilling prophecy. But then does it sustain itself is like the major question, right, when we're talking about ecosystems. And to my contention is, this is why we have all these pump and dumps, this is why we have all these volatility in the market, is because it's not necessarily being cyclical, it's being juiced. And then how do we get out of this? I only see it from the lowest perspective of my community. But, I mean, when I read some of the stuff that Soul Sister was having and talking about, I'm like, oh, I know what that Baca equation really means. And so, you know, that's when I started to think about it, from putting my piece of the puzzle to everybody, and like trying to figure out like what's the best way that I could do it. And I think that's part of the research project, like the full meaning of it is like, I believe all of us have our own piece of the puzzle, and that we've all been working on our own the best way I've been framing it is like every great project starts with a personal itch, and like this is an open source philosophy, right? Like there's something that you just do because like you like it, and then the more you do it is the more you figure out how to make it better for yourself, and then like later you could give tips to other people. This is the insightful wisdom that like when you have a buddy, you know, I don't need to know everything about eclipse and binaries, music process, and even, you know, but I have confidence and respect for him to toss him some of my good ideas, and then, you know, confidence that he could do what he does with it, and that it's going to be greater for the whole. So then when I get that music, then I could go to town on the visuals, and then it works great that way. And like that's a simple principle, but that's also like the basics, and that's like part of like reinforcing that on the cultural build of, you know, hopefully what we get with this NFT mandala, which is actually kind of perfect because Steph, I've been talking to my friend, like it's like we're gonna load these cards into like those oracle things. You said yours is based off of the Tibetan what? Do you know?
The one I'm doing for my job is
Yeah.
based on the Mo. It's like the Tibetan I Ching. It's coming out of this kind of Mahayana school, I think, of Buddhism.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, it's just an oracle that I was working with in work for kind of like working between workers, like how to create a different moment in the work time. But yeah, it would be nice to reconnect this, and I'm also talking with my colleague at work actually with this kind of conference thing, and she also sent some work. But this technology that I now kind of, where you also contributed with, like in the next iteration, they will also make it for desktops. And I am checking with them, like now they're a bit busy with the conference, but I'm checking immediately with them, like it would be nice that you don't need to go through Let's Gauche, but that you can immediately kind of onboard yourself, so that you don't need like me to be like in the middle.
Yeah.
So like that's kind of what I'm asking them, but now they're really busy these days, but I think yeah, like it's good to kind of already be part of it and keep track of it, like when it gets better, because it's new technology also.
For sure. And that's my friend, his basically the rotating mind map is based off of the I Ching. I forgot what exactly sequence he's doing, but you know, so I was like, oh man, that's like perfect. That's why I instantly got like what he was trying to do, because I was like, oh, that's great. And because I've used there's like a web version of the I Ching, and basically for anybody that doesn't know what the I Ching is basically they set up these basic principles, and it's based off of like the calendar system way back when, with a DAOS calendar system. But you have the structure, and you put in a little bit of novelty with some wisdom and basic like chaos theory. The meaning happens within you making those connections in that moment. So, and that's basically what I you know, the principles behind collecting all of these insights of us working, you know, in the Web3 world, and then organizing them in a way that they could be meaningful when we interact with the Oracle. In a sense, the Oracle is for your own self-discovery, but based in the context of navigating the Web3 world.
Hey Satori, I got a wisdom nugget for you. You ready?
Yeah.
You were inspiring me there with the talk about you know, the two different sides coming together, and that kind of being like the essence of you know, like that's kind of like how society always finds the ethical way forward, is to have those two sides at the table. Mm-hmm. Well, with that context, you reminded me of this guy I watch. I think his name's Anton. I gotta look it up. Anton Petrov. I put a link in the Discord, but he did this little bit on how they just did an experiment to show quantum domains, and this is, you know, definitely above my pay grade here. But he's getting into like talking about it's the yin and the yang talk, right? And it's like if you stare at that long enough, you see that there's a third aspect there, right? and it's that there's a boundary, and it's just the idea that like even the skin is an organ. It's and that boundary has a purpose, right?
Yeah.
And I think for some reason I think that's really important. That's a really important clue to pay attention from nature right now, as we're entering these times where everybody's like, you know, really wanting to put up some kind of wall or boundary, or at least have some kind of check on who is in my space, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's easy to demonize that. It's easy to say that's wrong and we all should just be, I don't know, singing Kumbaya and kissing together. I don't know. But the point is, we all do have our boundary. And if we all get to the table and talk about what those boundaries are, you start to see the two sides form, and you start to see a wall. And the wall is not to keep each other out. It's to filter the flow of who's coming in and out, so that you don't lose diversity. Otherwise, you just have one big blue or one big yellow. If you want the two sides, you got to have that wall, but that wall has to be permeable. It has to have it has to have highways. It has to have ways to get through, and it has to have people that manage that.
For sure.
Just a little insight, man. And on that note, that's what buddies do for you, man. When you're in the trenches with people, having these kinds of conversations, you get a little boost of inspiration. Anytime you need, you know, you go, I like the words you said, confidential or confidence, you know, you start to build up confidence with a buddy. When those people aren't there, you can do it with a robot quite a bit. And it's kind of like throwing a baseball at a backstop. It doesn't mean you're any good at playing a game with people. It just means you're really good at throwing a ball now.
Yeah. And, you know, to further this
I
point.
like that.
Yeah. And to further this point about the buddy system, but also to boundaries, I think that's part of the first initial stage of like starting off as student or beginner's mind, is like you find out like what kind of mix you are of all these like different fluid roles, and where
That's right.
Yeah. And then like you seeing like how, okay, like just what I mean about having like confidence in eclipsing binary, like it's also, I do this all the time with Curry, and everybody always kind of laughs because they see all my video editing. I have all these crazy visuals and I do really cool with my visual editing. But every time there's a real discussion about like, you know, artwork, visual artwork, I go, oh man, you got to tell Curry that, or oh man, like Curry's so great at doing the visuals, like blah, blah, blah. It's like to be humbled and to recognize, you know, like his expertise. Like, no, like the real person you want to talk to is Curry. Curry is my source code for all of that. Like Curry's the one that I go to. Like you need to go to that guy. And that's part of like the buddy system, but also too, I think when we're talking about like sharing information and going through the project, like the NFT is a mandala is kind of a way to like show how that person with their own, you know, attention and time and work, but also based on, you know, where they fall on their curiosity of that crypto economic flower, that shows them, like in the sense in the kitchen, I was saying, it shows like your stripes in a sense of like, oh, I can handle this part of the station because I've done it before, or that I've done it in this context, that I've worked meaningfully at this DAO, and here's kind of like my credentials without being like a real credential. It's like, okay, like I've done this cool stuff before, and that's why, like, you know, oh, I could try to jump into this stream, and then like it's based on this overall like web of like, you know, intellectual / creative artwork that's like stored roughly in the library / creative commons Imaginarium pool. At least that's my thinking right now.
Yeah, it's like that, sometimes thinking what idea brings the other one, and you know, like going back and how this all started, or it's so some cool flow.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, because basically when I keep on talking about like the idea behind the fluid roles and like creative group dynamics, the different distinctions, but I think that's where we build up cards in like those categories. So like later you can find out too, like, because you may be like more like math dominant or systems thinking, and you're always thinking like, how does that creative person always comes up with those weird ideas? And it's also too like when I always have this thing, and I've been telling my friend from the Team Human thing, and it goes to that personal itch thing. Is like, I think me and the Team Human guy like connected instantly on this part of the problem, because we've been personally scratching that itch of Robert Anton Wilson for a long time. Even to the extent that like I recognize watching him, like looking at his stuff that he was sharing with me, I'm like, oh my god, you may like Robert Anton Wilson more than me. Like, oh god, please, like, I don't know if that's a wise thing to have someone that knows Robert Anton Wilson more than me. I'm usually the one always talking about Robert Anton Wilson in any group dynamics. So it was funny to see him, like how far along he's been working his own part of the personal itch of Robert Anton Wilson, to the extent that when we instantly started to talk meaningfully on this part of the thing, the feedback that I'm getting is like, oh great, I think this is actually a better working model to do the research. And I'm like, oh my god, that's exactly like the exchange that I want. And you know, even to the extent that it was kind of funny to find out, you know, boundaries and group dynamics. Like when I share that part of the stuff in tech, it's not alarming, but it was just, I just laugh at myself because, you know, Soul Sister's response when I was talking about source code in like the poetic sense was, oh, so does that mean we could compile it? Does that mean we could run it like a product? And I'm like, yeah, but that, like in my orders of operations, that's not like the next sequence of like what you ask yourself. That's like step like 12, 13, 27. The first couple of steps is like, okay, what does this actually mean? The first couple of things that I sent him, he says, okay, I know what you mean by this, but like you use these two phrases and they're pretty like strange, and I think you mean this by it, but it could mean this, and like, can you clarify that with me? And those were the words that I changed like poetically to like signal to more of the group how they talk. And so to have someone recognize that instantly, it's very beneficial for me on that part of the task. But that comes like with time and stuff, and like, you know, and like how do you like get that by kind of being open and realizing that. But like it's like that's only one that we ever got to like that point, because like he's been, you know, probably studying Robert Anton Wilson longer than I have.
Is John?
Yeah, John.
I've been reading his stuff on, because he invited me to his app.
Yeah. That's what we're gonna do, the Imaginarium station. And so I'm gonna load some of the stuff I've been talking about. But yeah, go on.
Oh yeah, I've been reading the stuff that's going on there. I feel like in Omega, you know, like I'm reading, I'm captivated by everything that's going on. Because I haven't gone down that rabbit hole. I don't fully understand all the language.
Yeah.
Trying to make sense of it, but very, very interesting what he's doing with the mind mapping. Definitely something to look at.
Hey, that language thing keeps coming up, and that's something I expect to take the forefront more. I don't know if you guys have it seems like everybody's speaking different languages everywhere I go, right? In these crypto communities. So I'm thinking everybody probably has an intuition for the idea of like of context in how different languages, like once you go to a different language, the more you learn it, the more you might learn how the system it has for context is different than your native language. Meaning like some of the older languages, I think they called them high context languages in general, meaning like everything you said had a lot of pretext or context to it. Yeah. So the words weren't that specific themselves. And then you get all the way to like English, and most English speakers know that there's like a lot of funny areas that exist as soon as you start to translate, because people in native languages, they'll always tell you, well, there's no word for that. Like, you guys don't have a word for that. And then I think a lot, like for English speakers, a lot of times we're looking at it like, well, we have a particular word for that, but that's not even a word in your culture. So I think the idea that that's happening on both sides kind of says that there's a lot of room for that in between, whatever you want to call it, buddy roll, right? Where it's like it's an interpersonal relationship where I kind of know what you mean because I know that twinkle in your eye, or I know what you mean when you start to fiddle with your fingers like that, because we've already developed enough context so that this area of language that's new, that we're navigating newly, we're making it up as we speak. It's lingo. They always have existed, and they always will exist. And that is actually the spot of the arts, right? Like you're saying, like that is where those people always exist. So naturally they're always dealing with that. That's why they usually go to symbols, right? Because you can say all these other things. But if we could just keep in our mind that whenever we're doing this lingo game, a lot of times with branding it happens, or marketing, whenever we're doing this lingo game, especially in English, you could say I have source code, and I'm literally thinking over here that you already have code for this and we should get going on this now, right?
Yeah.
And you might be saying, like, I'm trying to say in an English lingo sense, many eons away from that computer programmer that knows binary, right?
Yeah.
You're basically saying that source code is it also is in a poetic way. It's a it's a codified version of what you observe, what you're observing right now. That's also source code. So that's like a more generalized idea of that. And when you get people together, I think what Seb was trying to do there was, I don't know what she's doing, but maybe she was trying to fish out, like, hey, who do we have at this table when they're saying source code? Are they all meaning the same thing? You know, you gotta wonder.
Yeah, totally.